When it comes to covert agendas, we are in the end game now. I've been defending Michael Jackson in blogs and videos for years, with the real facts and details that mainstream media was trying to hide from you. Regardless, Michael Jackson was vindicated, so they kind of had to leave him alone. But I warned in some of those videos that something was on its way. They were not done with Michael Jackson. Despite being investigated by the FBI for 10 years and cleared, despite having his home raided and them finding no evidence of child molestation, and despite being acquitted and exonerated in a U.S. court of law as innocent, they literally release one deceptive, one-sided mockumentary featuring the account of two proven liars, declare it the infallible gospel despite several inconsistencies therein, and his not guilty verdict. And just like that, with one-sided film, because it's not a documentary, they've transcended facts, evidence, and court rulings. Corporate America pronounced MJ guilty, and they proceeded with the agenda to corrupt and destroy the legacy of the late Michael Jackson. The world that George Orwell warned us about is here. Facts, evidence, court rulings, meaningless. People are literally being compensated and coached, led past court doors right onto television to tell compelling, coached stories. And the emotionally compromised, shocked masses believe what the television set tells them. Corporate America gets to dictate what's real and what isn't. They cook up these one-sided documentaries, and just like that, they tell us, well, look, there it is, he's guilty. Let's start muting him and taking all his music down. Because that's the right thing to do, and if you don't get on board, well, you're a child molester supporter. They are lying, censoring the truth, rolling out these agendas nonstop, and playing with our minds. Wake up. Every single day, the internet is pouring in the receipts and proof that the two featured men were not telling the truth. Regardless, many media outlets are hiding all the information and still moving full speed ahead. And unbeknownst to many people, they're using many psychological media mind control tricks, such as proof by assertion. These are covert mind control strategies with which to fulfill these COINTELPRO agendas. Once you understand how these mind control tricks work, then it's very easy to see when they're doing it. And of course I'll explain it. Proof by assertion works like this. They have a lot of people, celebrities, and pundits in key positions. Some of these positioned people are assigned different stances. Some of them pro Michael Jackson, some of them against. Most of them cautious and remain on the sidelines. But everyone smoothly makes the agreement that the accounts in the documentary is true, and all sides of the issue speak as though the contents of the documentary is a given and fact. So when the conversation on all corporate platforms is controlled, all publications and platforms and pundits make the agreement that the documentary is true. The trick? After a while, we just accept it, whether you're for or against Michael. No one is led to question the information. And that is the psychological trick of proof by assertion. And there's many other tricks they're using, and for many different topics. In truth, they are very effective, and they're up now, but they have a fight on their hands. This was an agenda in the making for years. So let's break this thing down, lay it all out, and expose this for what this is. I'm going to start from the top, and with facts, evidence, and research, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to leave nothing out so that there is no question about what they're doing now. Corporate mainstream media slandered Michael Jackson when he was alive, with historically some of the worst news reporting, and then the media was left with egg on its face when he was acquitted of all charges and moonwalked out of the courtroom. No one did him any favors. He was innocent, and it was officially proven in court, but the media did not show you why. So for those not familiar with my channel, and if this is the first video that you're seeing, I had a few videos go viral. Yes, some of them were for sports, but the main ones were for covering a few famous people and showing you the proof of what the media was hiding, not all media and not all journalists. There are many great journalists out there. I'm friends with many and family to some. But yes, there were many networks guilty of stifling all the information and creating false narratives on people. And one of those targeted people was, without a doubt, Michael Jackson. And one main thing about my videos that I pride myself on is that it's not full of any conjecture. It's based on pure facts and evidence. That's why they reached so far. So with that said, there's probably many of you out there who honestly never really knew what happened with the Michael Jackson stuff that you heard in the media. So for those who do already know, and for those who want to know, let me take you all the way back and cover everything. So let's go all the way back to Michael Jackson's first accuser, Evan Chandler. Michael Jackson very famously helped kids and people from all over the world. He met the Chandlers after they helped him on the road, so very cordially he brought them into the fold. So he invited the family to a bunch of things, and Jordy got to hang out at Neverland, no big deal. However, Jordan's father, Evan, was a problem, and he'd eventually become accuser number one. You see, Evan kept exploiting the friendship with Jackson to hound him for favors. He kept pressuring Jackson to give him money for his script writing endeavors and to build an extension on his home. When he saw Jackson, he saw millions of dollars, and he was very greedy and persistent, and he just became too much. So eventually, Jackson had to cut him off. But Jackson kept the relationship with Jordan and June, which enraged Evan Chandler. He was extremely jealous, and he was up to something. He finally came up with his plan to get at MJ's money. A dentist, he literally drugged his son to try to get him to say something. The man was completely possessed with greed. And eventually, he hooked up with a sleazeball lawyer, Barry Rothman, and designed an extortion plot to accuse Michael Jackson of assaulting his son. Initially, Michael underestimated Evan Chandler and Barry Rothman because he didn't understand that Rothman was very experienced with this sort of thing. He knew just what to say and how to play it. So when they approached Jackson with the threat, Jackson didn't pay anything. And then when they went public, Jackson's handlers quickly advised him to pay this out. They agreed it was an extortion, and the best thing to do was to settle. And that is exactly what Jackson's insurance did. Jackson paid this out to get this over and done quick. But there's a reason why you never hear about who the accuser is. Because the accuser was never really the kid, it was the father of the kid. Carrie Fisher exposed this because she knew exactly who he was. And she mentioned that she knew about this plot. Media never told you that. You see, Evan Chandler was kind of a criminal. He used to write drug prescriptions for celebrities to get in their crowds. Carrie Fisher was one of them. He was her drug dealer, and he bragged about the things that he was going to do, including this thing with Michael Jackson. And because people were onto his scheme, he was even recorded. There's recordings of him all over the internet that many media networks just did not tell you about. Some did, most didn't. Most MJ fans probably heard this a million times, but your average person probably didn't. Listen to this.
Meanwhile, a new development in the child sex abuse allegations against the 35-year-old singer. Sandra Hughes has details on that.
CBS News has obtained a taped phone conversation. The voices are purportedly the father of the 13-year-old boy who is accusing Michael Jackson of molesting him and the boy's stepfather. The conversation was taped in July before the police began their investigation.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him. Beyond his worst nightmares. So one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. There will be destroyed forever.
From the beginning, Jackson's private investigator said the accusations were brought about by a failed extortion attempt and says the taped conversation reinforces that.
It spells out everything to me that this was an extortion attempt from the very beginning. That it was all planned.
So for Michael Jackson's very first accuser number one, well, that's pretty much that. On to accuser number two. Accuser number two was the infamous Arvizo family. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail because I don't have to. Many celebrities already know who this family is, and they actually tried to warn Michael to stay away from them. But he didn't listen because he had a good heart. So Janet Arvizo paraded her child with ailments and hard luck stories to Michael, and of course, Michael helped them out too. What the public may or may not know is that the Arvizos have a long history of fraud, schemes, lies, bogus lawsuits, and Michael Jackson was merely another one. So the minute that Michael Jackson suddenly had bad press from accuser number one, that guy, no one really knew the first accuser was a liar because the media fanned the flames on it. And while the media was tearing Michael apart, the Arvizos seized that opportunity and jumped in line to say, "Me too." It was at this point where Michael wasn't going to listen to his handlers and pay out settlements left and right. He decided to go to court this time. And it was in this famous trial that all the people with stories got obliterated in court, including the Arvizo family. That boy, Gavin Arvizo, was so obviously lying. Michael Jackson was cleared of all charges, and that jury knew Michael was an innocent man. Why don't we listen to what was said about him?
Michael Jackson, not guilty, all 10 counts. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Robin. What a difference an hour makes in the life of Michael Jackson. He came to court facing terrible charges that drained him of health and spirit. And then moments later, vindication, finally going home to Neverland to sleep, unburdened by the prospect of prison.
Not guilty 10 times. In fact, the jury confirmed, despite all the familiar faces like Jay Leno, Chris Tucker, and Macaulay Culkin, it was the woman who covered her face that sunk the prosecution case. The accuser's mother could not be believed, and her kids who accused Jackson of child molestation could not be trusted either. Some jurors said the mom made them feel uncomfortable.
The mother, when she looked at me and snapped her fingers a few times, and she says, "You know how our culture is," and winks at me, I thought, no, that's not the way our culture is.
It was a clear-cut verdict. Victory for Michael Jackson, a rebuke for the prosecution. Diane?
All right, Jim, we thank you so much. Now we turn to the Michael Jackson jurors. Second thoughts? Anybody here? No second thoughts. I wanted to ask about the mother, and you, Ms. Cook, specifically talked about her. You said at one point that she was sort of waving her finger at you.
And she snapped.
Show me what she did.
Yeah, just like that, and you don't snap your fingers at a jury, you snap your fingers to get a dog to mind you.
She would look at the jury and then snap her fingers and say, you know, this is the way it should be.
And she was right in our faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was very intimidating because Mike and I were directly across from the witnesses. And she would turn right to us like she's just, you know.
But Melissa, what did that say to you? I mean, apart from how it made you feel, what did that say to you about who she was and the testimony she gave?
Her testimony, a lot of the parts of her testimony, I wanted to just break out laughing.
Anxious, and he didn't seem to come across someone that had been molested.
He told the police in his initial interview he believed it was 4 or 5 times that he was molested. Later on the witness stand, it became 1 or 2 times.
Right.
That's a huge problem.
We talked about that, and all of us felt the same way. We felt that this kid's lying. You know, he really is lying about what's going on.
Through his teeth,
yeah.
Lying.
And there you have it, folks. That was everything. That was everything you needed to know about the Michael Jackson allegations. And for those of you who didn't know, now you see where I was back then, and that the logical position was to defend Michael Jackson against the media's slandering. They've been trying to paint a picture and push a presumption of guilt despite what was actually real. After his time in court, the issue was settled and dead. Again, an FBI investigation produced no findings of child molestation and an acquittal on all counts. The media was wrong and proven wrong, and it was time to leave Michael Jackson alone. But now, here they come again, stronger than ever, and they got him. The reason why you're hearing about Michael Jackson again is that they're trying out the new tricks of the trade that have been effective against Bill Cosby and R. Kelly. They're trying it against Michael Jackson because they didn't get him the first time. Today, we have movements and hashtags and a robust social media like never before. with memes and all sorts of things. Oh, they have many plans in store, and just like a new era of McCarthyism, we're now socially engineered into victim culture, outrage culture, very public condemnations and tar and featherings of people. We're gonna mute him and mute that, pretty much living in Orwellian predictions. So again, Michael Jackson was acquitted of all charges, and he's not here anymore, so why do we keep hearing about him again? All of a sudden, overnight, wake up. Now, mysteriously, all of a sudden, two men who previously defended Michael Jackson and swore in court Michael never molested them, changed their stories around and are now coming forward with claims of molestation in a historically salacious documentary, Leaving Neverland. Then immediately, the corporate entities that couldn't wait to pounce on Jackson immediately began making announcements of condemnation and removal of Jackson's music from playlists. All of a sudden, these men who changed their stories around are given such validation. Oprah Winfrey and Gayle are all suddenly lined up to interview these guys. Ellen puts a tweet out, "I hope you're watching Leaving Neverland." Like, yeah, sure, that's normal. No corporate influence there. And it's like we can even almost hear the invisible corporate whips cracking. And then boom, Neo and John Legend make statements so shockingly disloyal and empty-headed. No, they don't read, they don't fact check, they never consider that a lot of people and kids from that time are coming out saying that these guys are lying. And they don't have any sense of code to just be quiet. Just publicly, blah, blah, blah. It's on TV, it's gotta be true. Mute Michael Jackson. More proof by assertion. No thinking. No questioning the information. No more vetting or verifying allegations anymore. Just get these people, celebrities and pundits in key positions with varying opinions and stances to all agree and confirm the information. It seems all these corporate entities were just set to go with this thing, like they almost knew ahead of time. There's just one, I guess, problem with all of this that the media pundits are not talking about. That problem? The lies. So let's talk about it. Purely from a journalistic standpoint, Leaving Neverland is garbage. Trash. That is not a documentary. And calling it a documentary is insulting to the genre. It was a one-sided attack on Michael Jackson, with lots of problems with the stories Wade Robson and James Safechuck told you. And the internet is overflowing with those issues. So I'll mention just a few of them here. Problem number one that you can see on blogs all over the place at this point. James Safechuck said Michael Jackson invited him to Euro Disney Paris in 1988, but that park first opened in 1992. Oprah, Gayle, and all these other pundits sat there in front of them, blinking, and didn't really ask him anything about these things. So let me repeat that. James Safechuck said Michael Jackson invited him to a place that didn't yet exist the day he said he asked him. So, for me, I don't think I'm muting Michael Jackson just yet. When someone's entire section of a story is not possible, that's a red flag on the credibility for everything else. For me, I'm already out, but there's a lot more, so let's just go over a few more. I wrote a lot of these things in my blog that Facebook blocked, so let me give you a few more. The internet was also quick to point out something wrong with James Safechuck's mother. She said she celebrated and danced when Michael Jackson died, which is just a very weird and twisted thing to say, no matter what happened. Anytime people are lying, you could see that there's something wrong with these people and the things that they say that are not consistent with real victims. The problem that many people pointed out was that Jackson died in 2009, but according to Safechuck's testimony in a filed lawsuit, he only began to realize he was abused in 2013 after going to therapy. So why was his mother dancing in 2009? And you can watch and follow every time the internet catches up with these people, the media generates excuses for these things. They're covering their bases and mistakes. This is really weird. Wade Robson's wife got caught lying. Amanda Robson. In the documentary, Amanda Robson said she didn't have a history of sexual abuse, so she didn't know how to help Wade. But in a fund they both set up, she listed herself as also a survivor, and they since deleted that scene out of the documentary. But luckily, people are recording these things before they delete and edit them out. Hence my statement that this documentary is truly garbage.
I had no knowledge of child sexual abuse or the psychological way it plays out into adulthood. You know, I was incredibly naive on the subject, so to me, you know, the fact that he had lied about it to me, I thought the repercussions must be something that affected the...
There's lies, inconsistencies, and sloppiness all over the place, and they keep covering for these things. Then there was the imagery of Wade Robson burning Michael Jackson memorabilia in a bonfire, when that wasn't exactly true. These were things done for theatrics and shock. And there's just so much shadiness with this documentary, like things that weren't actually real, just footage and things thrown in to make Michael Jackson look bad. In reality, Wade sold the Jackson memorabilia he had for money. He asked Julian's auction not to mention his name, but they released it anyway. And they sold the Jackson fedora and glove that he owned. Then he made some story about the Thriller jacket, but it's not really important. When the point is, there's a lot of things that are weird and he has to go back and explain. There's a pattern of needing to explain things. And so you see that the director put a lot of things in this documentary just for the purpose of making Michael Jackson look bad. But if you dig deep, there's something wrong with it. I celebrated when Jackson died. The imagery of burning his glove and his memorabilia in a bonfire. We can see what's going on here. It's a hit piece. So how do you continue to throw your belief into something when the storytellers have credibility issues? The people who you see interviewing them are not calling these things out. They're hiding these things from you to protect the story. Leaving Neverland is bogus. Let's talk about some more stuff. There's a lot of inconsistencies with these two characters and actually their whole families. And I can really do this all day, but let's try to focus in on some of the main, really problematic ones. And the biggest one for me is something that any journalist can understand. And that's everyone that Wade Robson said was also molested by Michael Jackson fired back at him and accused Wade Robson of being a liar. That's very important. Let's really think about that. Wade Robson made claims about other kids. Those other kids all say Wade Robson is a liar. Let that sink in. Wade Robson said Brett Barnes replaced him as Michael Jackson's boy toy. Brett Barnes publicly responded and said Wade Robson is lying. He said Michael Jackson never molested him, and he threatened to sue HBO and asked HBO to remove his name and all reference to him in that documentary. That really stuck with me when that happened, because he's not the only one. Wade Robson also tried to say Aaron Carter was there being molested by Michael Jackson. Aaron Carter, just like Brett Barnes, also fired back, insisted Michael never molested him either, and also called Wade Robson a liar. And he also said he would like to punch him in his face. So everyone this guy says was molested there with him is calling him a liar and denouncing his stories, and they still go full speed ahead with this documentary. Oprah still interviews them. Ellen still tweets this out. These MK Ultra celebrities all publicly condemn him, even though there's hordes of people who were also there in Michael's life not being given a platform, saying none of this is true. We're just gonna ignore everyone else and just go with these two guys who have inconsistencies, guys who changed their stories around. As a journalist, when there's no proof, sometimes you look for corroboration. They didn't get any. Paris Hilton made a comment saying that these guys are lying. A lot of the kids from back then, whose financial situations might have been a bit better than theirs, are all saying that this is not true. They confirm Michael Jackson never did anything to them. They don't believe that he would do anything to anyone. And they too think these guys are lying. And I do too. Here's why. Certain things have to follow logic. Pedophilia has certain traits that come along with it. It's like a disease, and a pedophile strikes many times in his life, throughout his life. These two guys are all out on their own, which doesn't make sense. Pedophiles strike family members. They strike many times throughout their lives. No one is corroborating Michael Jackson as a molester. They all say the exact opposite, passionately. They say he just doesn't have that sort of thing in him. Take Matt Lauer, for example. so much corroboration of him hitting on people throughout the years and being a creep. So when someone's of a nature, there's a track record there. Again, Leaving Neverland doesn't get that track record. They're getting shut down by everyone else. They're even being sued by Brett Barnes, one of the people they tried to imply was also molested. But this is another testament to the awesome power of lies, rumors, and the media. People are willing to believe everybody's lying and covering for Michael Jackson, except these two. These two, whose stories don't check out. And this documentary should have never seen the light of day. And there is another very big problem. And it kind of destroys everything Wade has to say. What that shockumentary left out was that Wade Robson was the boyfriend of Michael Jackson's niece, Brandy Jackson. And Michael Jackson set them up together. And they were together for 7 years, almost a decade. Brandy Jackson, the daughter of Jackie, is all over the internet telling people this. Oprah and the media ignored her and kept this whole thing out of discussion and out of that documentary. And the reason why they left that out of the documentary is because it ruins everything Wade said. They were trying to say Michael Jackson encouraged them to hate women. But not only were there girls around too, but Michael Jackson set this guy up with his niece when he thought he was a good kid. You already know people are going to just keep on making excuses to believe what they're programmed to believe or what they want to believe. So here's a question. Is Wade Robson, who's profiting from this, the one telling the truth? And are all these other people lying? All lying just to protect Michael Jackson, who's dead? I, for one, think not. I don't like this because I know they're trying to do a very bad thing. That goes for everyone involved with this. Everyone who knows Michael Jackson personally is grieving from this because they know who he was as a man. And these disgusting people and the minions and the collaborators are trying to attach a persona on someone that isn't true. And I'm sorry, that's just not cool. Sometimes when the shoe fits, it's hard to defend somebody. But Michael Jackson wasn't a sneaky criminal type, bold and brazen to knowingly do something wrong with children for his own sexual gratification. That narrative is not true, and people know that. Elizabeth Taylor, all his personal friends, that was just not consistent with who he was, according to everyone. So what these slimy people are trying to pull off at Michael's expense is really something else. We're in a time in which people have really lost their soul or their ability to assess right from wrong. And they're trying to change the depiction of who someone was in life. His musical genius aside, someone who is such a good person, they're trying to make this new characterization of him stick, of this lustful sexual nature that was not true in real life. And most of the people involved are doing this for money or to maintain their positions. So logically, on what grounds is this thing legit? It isn't. Even if you believe these guys, or want to believe them, this muting and aggressive condemnation is not justified because there's enough information via their inconsistent statements and people saying they're lying to put a pause on this thing. And then you add the fact that the man was acquitted in court. This fake documentary should never have been released. And yes, there's more and there's more and there's more, but we don't even have to go through everything. I said enough.
Right, that's probably the only time we really felt like we got to know a little bit more about Michael Jackson, and that's part of what we talked about in deliberations. We felt that Michael was still a kid in a man's body, and we felt that the Bashir tape, if he could air it the way he wanted to air it, he would make millions on it, which I'm sure he did. We felt that this guy is another gold digger. He's using Michael Jackson to lure him in, get him to say what he wants him to say, because that's what people will buy.
Everything that I do is inspired from the children, you know, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, if it wasn't for the children, I'd throw in the towel.
I've been able to sleep at night, and so did half the other jurors, because we all felt we came to the right conclusion.
Big Brother and the powers that be are telling us to mute Michael Jackson, and they're already pulling his music from radio stations because of one documentary? A one-sided documentary in which the information is not truthful and not checking out? No. This needs to be stopped right now. This is just a lame agenda to destroy Michael Jackson that they planned a long time. And it's a bad precedent in which corporations could just make a documentary about somebody with the information not even checking out, bypass all law of the land and constitutional rights by just getting all the corporate minions and celebrities to co-sign it, and then just begin punishment and removal of his music from history. Yes, that is Orwellian, and we need to shut that down now. At some point, we have to understand that we are in a matrix, and the powers that be are getting even better at what they do. And there are agendas to keep your mind enslaved about so many things. This issue is just one of several things, and all of us as individuals have to raise our awareness of this because the times are getting bad. They're taking more liberties and rolling out more agendas than ever before. And we have to fight it. Doesn't matter if you're an MJ fan or not. This is about principle. This is about right and wrong. This is about constitutional rights and what should be allowed and what should not be allowed. This should not have taken place. I don't believe those men and their families were telling the truth because that film was laden with very serious inconsistencies and should not have been so heavily endorsed by so many high-profile people. There's a principle to this thing, and what else can they do the same thing with? That documentary, if you want to call it that, is trash. But they have a way of working our minds and making us believe what our common sense would show us is not true. These entities are very advanced, and they are good at what they do, and they're perfecting it. Their objective is deception. People need to stop thinking they're watching something and, oh, well, he's credible. No, that's exactly what some of these people are coached and prepped to appear like. We have to stop allowing the system to compromise us, allowing them to shock us and lead us by our emotions. We're in a time in which we're going to have to rely on our logic more than our emotions and things coming from that television set. So no, I'm not muting Michael Jackson because this whole thing is wrong. It's forced, and it has dirty hands all over it. I defended Michael Jackson back in the day because then, based on the evidence, it was the right thing to do. And even though the game has changed and the opposition is much more formidable and the illusions and strategies are more convincing than they've ever been, the truth has not changed one bit. There is a silver lining to this, and it's that Michael Jackson's becoming a figure that is still fighting the system, even from the grave. Because as they continue to attack this man, unleashing all the tricks with all the celebrities and corporate power at their disposal, it's very slowly causing a backlash. People's love for Michael, knowing who he really is allowing growing segments of society to see exactly what they're doing. Leaving Neverland is a lie. Wake up and resist.
I'm tired. I'm really, really tired of the manipulation. I'm tired of how the press is manipulating everything that's been happening in this situation. They do not tell the truth. They're liars. And they manipulate our history books. The history books are not true. It's a lie. The history books are lying. You need to know that. You must know that. All the forms of popular music, from jazz to hip-hop to bebop to soul, you talk about the different dances, from the cakewalk to the jitterbug to the Charleston to breakdancing. All these are forms of black dancing. The minute it became the all-time best-selling album in history in the Guinness Book of World Records, overnight, they called me a freak. They called me a homosexual. They called me a child molester. They said I tried to bleach my skin. They made everything to turn the public against me. This is all complete conspiracy. You have to know that. You know, it's time. I love you more. It's time for a change. And let's not leave this building and forget what has been said. Put it into your heart. Put it into your subconscious mind. And let's do something about it. We have to. We have to. Because it's been a long, long time coming. And a change has got to come. I love you. I love you. Please don't put this in your heart today and forget it tomorrow. Because we will have not accomplished our purpose. We will have not accomplished our purpose if that happens. This has got to stop. It's got to stop.